The first thing you learn in my trade is that everybody is a mark. And the second thing you learn, if you live long enough, is that the day you meet the one person who is not, that is the day your whole life comes apart. And if you are very lucky, comes apart into something better. I did not know that yet, the night we planted Nell in the Duke of Ashcombe's house. I only knew that Josiah Kell had chosen the biggest mark of his life, and that my girl was the knife he meant to open it with. He's rich as 3 bishops, Kell said, in the back room of the flash house where he ran his string of thieves, laying it out for us the way a general lays out a war. He's got a strong room under that townhouse stuffed with the family plate and 40 years of jewels, and a lock on it my weasel can crack in a quarter-hour if he's got a quarter-hour clear. And the whole of the town says the Duke of Ashcombe is a soft, dreaming, bookish sort of man who don't notice what's under his own nose. Kell smiled, and Kell's smile was the coldest thing in London. So we give him something pretty to not notice. We give him an heiress. The heiress was Nell. I had raised her, near enough, found her at 7 picking pockets on the cathedral steps, quicker than any grown thief in my string, and I'd taught her the cards and the cant and the long game, taught her to be a dozen different girls and never once herself, because being yourself in our trade gets you hanged. She was 23 now, and she could deal a cold deck under a chandelier and lift a watch off a magistrate and curtsy like a duchess. And Kell had spent a month and a small fortune turning her into Miss Rowena Ashford, an heiress lately come from the plantations, with a forged pedigree and a hired chaperone and gowns that cost more than I'd steal in a year. Her part was simple, and it was the hardest part of all. Get inside Ashcombe House for the season, be charming, be admired, learn the house, the doors, the servants' hours, the way to the strong room, the habits of the Duke. And when she'd learned it, leave a certain window unbarred on a certain night, and let Kell's men in to strip the place and walk away rich and vanish, and never be Rowena Ashford again. "You're sure of the girl?" Kell said to me, not to her, the way he always spoke past her as though she were a tool in a bag. "She's been queer lately, soft." "She's the best I ever trained," I said, which was true, and did not answer him, which he did not notice. I should tell you what I saw in her, that Kell never did, because it is the whole of this story. Kell saw a lockpick that could smile. I saw a girl who had been a tool so long she had forgotten she was a person, and who was starting, only starting, to mind. She'd stopped laughing at the marks. She'd started leaving a coin, sometimes, for the ones we'd fleeced who couldn't spare it. She was 23, and she had never once in her life been looked at by a soul who wanted nothing from her, and something in her had begun to ache for it the way a man lost in the desert aches for water without knowing the word. I did not tell Kell that. You did not tell Kell things that made his tools less useful. We sent her in on a Tuesday, to the Duke of Ashcombe's first ball of the season, in a gown the color of deep water, with a forged history and a false name and my whole heart, though I'd have died before I said so, going in with her through those tall lit doors. And the Duke of Ashcombe took one look at her across his own ballroom and knew. She told me the whole of that first night after, in the gray dawn, in the safe room we'd taken 3 streets off, and I have turned it over 10,000 times since. He was not a soft, dreaming, bookish man. That was the first lie of the whole business, and Kell had built his war on it. Gabriel, Duke of Ashcombe, was quiet, yes, quiet the way deep water is quiet, with a great deal moving underneath. He was a tall, still, watchful man in his late 30s with dark eyes that did not miss anything, and he had, Nell said, the manners of a man who had learned long ago that most people who smiled at him wanted his money, and had made a kind of cold peace with it. He knew, Nell said. She was sitting on the floor by the cold grate with her fine gown still on and her slippers off, and she looked, for the first time since she was a child, frightened. Silas, he knew, not that he said anything. He came and asked me to dance, all courtesy, and we danced, and I gave him the whole of it, the plantation and the poor dead papa and the fortune in sugar, word perfect, and he listened to every word with those eyes, and at the end of it he bowed over my hand and he said, "She swallowed," he said. "That is a very good story, Miss Ashford. One of the better ones I've been told in this room. Do come again tomorrow and tell me another." I felt the cold go down my spine. "He's playing you." "He's not though, that's the thing of it." She hugged her knees. "A man playing me would have had the runners on me at the door. He didn't. He knows I'm false top to bottom, and he asked me to come back." Why would a man ask a thief he's seen through to come back to his house? I did not have an answer. I have it now. But I did not have it then, and neither did she, and Kell, when we told him a careful, partial, edited version of it, heard only that the girl was inside and invited back, and rubbed his cold hands, and said the mark was greener than he'd hoped. She went back the next day, and the next. She was meant to be mapping the house, and she was a little, but mostly, I understood slowly, listening to her come home each dawn. She was going back because for the first time in her life a person was looking at her and seeing her, the real her, the thief under the heiress, and not despising it. Because that was what Ashcombe did. He never once pretended to believe her. And he never once threatened her either. He simply knew her and let her be known, and treated the knowing as a kind of privacy between them. He would take her walking in his cold green gardens and say, "You may drop the accent when we're alone, Miss Ashford. It's a good accent, but it plainly tires you." And she would drop it and be, for an hour, nearer to Nell Caro than she'd been in 20 years. He'd deal cards with her in the library and catch her palming the ace and say, mildly, "You needn't cheat me. I'm not a mark you have to beat. I only like the game," and set the cards down and mean it. "He's the loneliest man I ever saw," she told me one dawn, wondering. "Richest man in 3 counties, and he's got no one who talks to him true. Everyone lies to him for money. And I'm the biggest liar of the lot. I'm literally here to rob him, and I'm the only person who's told him a true word in years because he already knows what I am, so I've got nothing left to hide. Silas, it's the strangest thing. I've never in my life been able to stop performing for a mark. With him there's no point. He sees the seams, so I just am, and he likes it." Her voice dropped. "He likes me, the real one, the thief. Nobody's ever." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. I'd been the nearest thing to a father she had for 16 years, and even I had mostly loved the tool, the quick, clever hands. This man in his cold, rich house had somehow got straight past the tool to the frightened, decent, buried person, and had chosen her. And my girl, who had never been chosen by anyone for anything but her usefulness, was falling into it the way you fall through ice, all at once and past your depth before you know you're wet. And I, God forgive me, was the man sent to hold the door for the thieves who would rob him. I want to be honest about myself in this, because it is the only honest thing I ever did. For a long while I told myself it would come right, that she'd learn the house, we'd take the plate, she'd have her cut and vanish. The Duke would mourn a false heiress and mend, and no one the worse but a rich man who'd not miss a room of silver. That is how you live in my trade. You keep the marks a shape, a purse, a house, never a person, because the day they become a person you cannot do the work. Ashcombe became a person to me the night he saved Nell's life, and never knew he'd done it, and never knew I saw. There was another thief in the ring, one of Kell's newer men, a brute called Rourke, and Rourke had begun to think the long con was taking too long, and that a knife in the dark in a smashed strong room would serve as well. He waited for Nell one night in the mews behind Ashcombe House, meaning, I think, to force her to open the place then and there, or to cut her out of it. I was following her. I always followed her at a distance those nights. I did not trust Kell's string an inch, and I was too far back, and I would not have reached her in time. Ashcombe reached her. He had walked her to the garden door himself, as he'd taken to doing, and he saw Rourke come out of the dark, and he put himself between them without a word and without a flicker of fear, and he said, in that quiet, deep-water voice, "This lady is under the protection of this house. You will leave her, and you will leave my muse, and if I see your face again, I will have you before a magistrate who owes me a great many favors." And Rourke, who'd have gutted a constable, took one look at the still tall certain man who was not afraid of him, and went. Ashcombe never mentioned it to Nell as anything but a stray drunk. He didn't use it. He didn't press an advantage. He just walked her in and made sure she was safe and said good night to a woman he knew was there to rob him, as gently as if she'd been the heiress she pretended to be. I stood in the dark of the mews and watched the garden door close behind them, and I felt the thing every thief dreads feel about a mark, the thing that ends you in this trade. I felt that he was a good man, and that we were about to do a wicked thing to him, and that I did not think I could bear it. I went to Nell that dawn and I said the thing I had never said in 16 years. I said, "Girl, what if we didn't?" She looked at me. She'd been crying, I think, and hiding it. "Didn't what?" "Rob him." I sat down heavy. "What if we cut and run, take you out of it? Tell Kell the mark saw through you, the game's dead, we scatter. He'd rage, but he'd not chase, there's no profit chasing. You could be gone, be someone, I hardly knew how to say it. Be a person somewhere, Nell, not a tool. You're the only good thing I ever made, and I've spent your whole life aiming you at other people's throats, and I find all of a sudden at the worst possible moment that I'd rather you had a life." She started properly crying then. "It's too late, Silas. It's never too late to not do a thing." "No, I mean," she pressed her hands to her face, "it's too late because I love him. I've gone and I love him, the great quiet lonely man. And he knows what I am, and I'm going to have to be the one who leaves that window unbarred, or Kell'll know something's wrong and he'll come anyway. With knives this time, and work, and it'll be worse. You don't cross Kell and walk away. You know that, and either way I lose him. Either I rob him or I run, and either way Gabriel Ashcombe wakes one morning and knows the one true thing in his life was a thief who used him after all." She looked at me with her whole ruined heart in her face. "There's no way out of this that ends with me keeping him. I'm a thief. He's a duke. And even if he weren't, even if I came into his house to steal from him, you can't build anything on that. It's rotten from the first brick." And I, old fool, had no comfort for her, because she was right, and I knew it. And the only thing I could think was that I would burn Kell's whole world to the ground before I'd let it put a knife near her. What I did not know, what neither of us knew, sitting in the gray dawn certain we were trapped, was that the Duke of Ashcombe had, quietly in his deep-water way, already begun to build the way out. Because he had seen through Nell from the first glance, yes. But he had also, being no man's fool, seen through the whole of it, the heiress, the ring, the long con, the vault they were mapping from very nearly the start. And a man who has been robbed once, and has spent 15 years making certain it will never happen again, does not simply wait to be robbed a second time. He was running a con of his own, and we were all of us, Kell included, already inside it. It came to a head at the masquerade. Ashcombe gave a great masked ball at the season's height, the whole town in dominoes and Venetian masks, the house blazing, the strong room Kell believed full, and the household Kell believed distracted, the perfect night for the robbery. Kell set it for that night. Nell was to slip away at midnight and unbar the garden window. The weasel would crack the strong room. Rourke and the string would strip the plate and the jewels and be gone before the unmasking at 1. Nell came to me that afternoon white to the lips. "I can't do it," she said, "and I can't not do it. If I don't open the window, Kell comes with knives. If I do, I rob the only man who ever she couldn't finish. Silas, tell me what to do. You've always told me what to do." And for once in my wicked life, I told her the right thing. "Tell him," I said. "Tell Ashcombe, the whole of it, tonight before midnight. Throw yourself on the one man who's never yet done you a wrong turn and tell him the truth and let him choose what to do with it. It's the only card you've got left, girl, and it's the only one you've never once played in your life. The honest one. Play it." She went to the masquerade in a silver domino with her heart in her throat to betray the ring for the mark, and found, when she got him alone in his library at 11:30, and poured out the whole confession, the vault and Kell and the window and the knives, all of it, weeping, waiting for him to call the runners, that the Duke of Ashcombe already knew every word of it. "I know Nell," he said. Her name, her real name, she had never told it him. He had found it out, of course he had. "I've known since the second night. Miss Rowena Ashford's plantation doesn't exist. I had a man confirm it before I asked you to dance the second time. I know you were sent by a man called Kell. I know the window and the vault, and tonight—" He took her hands. "I let it run. Do you know why?" She shook her head past speech. "Two reasons." That quiet, deep voice. "The first is business. I have been waiting 15 years for the chance to take Josiah Kell. He robbed my father blind and broke his heart, and I could never once prove it, because Kell never comes himself and never leaves a thread. But a Kell who thinks he's about to rob a fool will come near enough to catch. I let your ring map an empty vault. The plate's been at my bank a month, so that Kell would grow bold enough to be there tonight, and I could take him at last in my own house in the act. You were the bait he'd never suspect, because he doesn't know I saw you the first instant. That is the con under the con, Nell. Thieves come to rob me. I rob the thieves of the one thing they've always kept safe, which is themselves." He almost smiled, that grave, slow smile. "It's a better game than cards." She got out somehow, and the second reason. And the Duke of Ashcombe, who could not be robbed, who saw through everyone, who had spent 15 lonely years knowing that every smile aimed at him was a hand aimed at his purse, looked at the thief they'd sent to ruin him, and set down the whole armor of his cleverness, and told the truth of his own. "The second reason," he said, "is that on the first night across the ballroom, a young woman told me a false name and a false history with the loneliest eyes I had ever seen, and I recognized them, because they were mine. And I have spent every day since inventing reasons to keep you in this house, the cards, the gardens, the walks, because you are the only person in 15 years who has looked at me and wanted nothing I could put a price on, because you already knew you couldn't have my money, so all that was left between us was us. The thief and the mark, and no lies possible because we'd started past all of them." His hands tightened on hers. "I could have had you taken any day this month. I never wanted you taken, Nell. I wanted you to stay, not as Rowena, as yourself, the quick, clever, frightened, decent person under all the parts. I have never in my life wanted anything I couldn't buy until I wanted you. And you are the one thing in England I cannot buy, cannot make stay against your will, and so I am reduced, your grace of nothing that I am, to asking. Don't open the window for Kell. Open it for me. Stay. Marry me. Be the one true thing in a house full of liars, and let me be yours." She said, "My Nell, my thief, 23 and never once chosen, told for the first time by a good man that she was wanted whole," she said. "I came here to rob you." "I know," said the Duke. "You're the best that ever tried. You never stood a chance. I'd already stolen you the first night across the room before you got your gloves off." And then, being a duke and no fool and a man in love, he added, "Now, there's a thief in my muse in a quarter-hour meaning me great harm, and I should very much like my future duchess's professional opinion on how best to catch the man who broke my father. Will you help me rob the robbers, Nell Caro? One last job. An honest one for once. The only honest theft you'll ever pull." And she wiped her eyes, and something came up in her that I'd been waiting 16 years to see, not the tool, not the part, but the person choosing at last her own side, and she said, "Give me the window, and send someone I trust to the garden gate." She looked at him. "His name's Silas. He raised me. He's the only other honest thief you'll ever meet." That is how I came to be standing at the Duke of Ashcombe's garden gate at midnight, on the right side of a robbery for the first time in my life, waiting for Josiah Kell. I will not give you every turn of the night, though I've dined out on it for years since. I'll give you the shape. Kell came because a Kell who thinks he's robbing a fool cannot stay away. He came himself, for once, the great spider down out of his web to take a duke's jewels with his own cold hands, with Rurk and the weasel and 3 more of the string behind him. Nell left the garden window unbarred, exactly as ordered. And they climbed in, quiet as smoke, into a dark house they thought was sleeping, and made their way to the strong room they thought was full, and found it open, and empty and lit, and the Duke of Ashcombe sitting on the edge of the empty vault in his shirt-sleeves with a candle and a pistol and the most patient expression in England. And behind him, in the shadows, more magistrates' men than Kell had thieves. "Josiah Kell," said the Duke pleasantly into the ringing silence, "you robbed my father in this house 18 years ago, and I could never prove it, and it has been the one unfinished piece of business of my life. You'll forgive me the theatricals. I find I wanted you to feel, just for a moment, the thing my father felt, the moment you understand the floor is gone from under you and everything you were sure of was someone else's game all along." He stood. "You came to rob a fool. There isn't one here. There's only a thief you didn't count and a girl you thought was a tool and 18 years of a son's patience. Take him." Kell went for the window. Nell was at the window. "I have never in my life been prouder of anything than I was of what my girl did then. She didn't strike him, didn't need to. She simply lifted off his person. In the half-second he shoved past her. The little book he carried always in his breast, the ledger, the record of every job and every man and every crime of 20 years. The thing Kell trusted no one with and never once let leave his own coat, lifted it clean the way I taught her at 7 on the cathedral steps, and stepped back and held it up and said, 'Looking for this, Mr. Kell.' And the spider, who had built his whole empire on never leaving a thread, watched a girl he'd sent to be his knife hand him, his own throat, his own ledger, every proof against him in the world, to a duke and a room full of the law. And I saw Josiah Kell understand, at last and too late, the oldest lesson of our trade, the one he'd taught 100 marks and never once thought could find him. Everybody is a mark, even the man who's sure he isn't. They took him. They took the whole string, on the evidence in that ledger, Rourke, the weasel, all of it, 20 years of Kell's wickedness unpicked in a night by the girl he'd underestimated exactly as he underestimated everyone, because he could not conceive that a tool might have a soul, or that a duke might have a heart, or that a thief might, given one clear chance in a lifetime, choose to be honest. The thieves had come to rob the house. The house robbed the thieves of their spider, their record, their whole rotten kingdom, and left them nothing. Thieves robbing thieves. My whole trade turned inside out in a single candle-lit room, and me standing in the middle of it on the honest side, an old forger gone straight at 60, because a good man saw the person in my girl before even I had. They were married in the spring, quietly, in the little church on the Ashcombe land, which the Duke chose over the grand cathedral because Nell said she'd spent enough of her life in places built to impress, and wanted, for once, only a place built to mean it. She told him everything in the weeks before, every con, every lift, every name, the whole black ledger of her own, because she would not, she said, start the one true thing in her life on a hidden brick. And he listened to all of it, the Deepwater man, and at the end of it he said only, "I know, Nell, I always knew. You forget I saw you the first night. I fell in love with the thief, not in spite of her. There's nothing to confess. There's only you, which is all I ever wanted and the one thing you never had to steal." She made a duchess the way she'd made everything else, quick, clever, watchful, missing nothing. And the town, which had been so thoroughly and expensively fooled by Miss Rowena Ashford, never once learned that the gracious young Duchess of Ashcombe, who could always tell when a man was lying to her husband, had learned the skill on the cathedral steps at 7. She used it mostly to protect him, for a rich, lonely good man is a mark his whole life long, and now he had at his side the finest thief in England entirely on his side, watching every hand that reached for him. No one ever robbed the Duke of Ashcombe again. His Duchess wouldn't have it. And me, I went straight, God help me, at 60, and lived out my years as the least likely thing in 3 counties. An honest man, in a cottage on the Ashcombe land, with a girl I'd raised for a tool grown into a woman who came to see me every week and called me the only father she'd known. and a duke who'd shake my old forger's hand and sit at my fire and ask my opinion on the estate as if I were a person of consequence, which, to the two of them, I somehow was. I think of it often, the whole strange turn of it. We sent a thief to rob the one man in England who could not be robbed, and he did the thing none of us, in all our cleverness, ever saw coming, the only theft none of us knew how to guard against. He looked past the part to the person, and he wanted her whole, and he waited patient as 18 years for her to choose, of her own free will, to be stolen. They sent Nell Caro to take everything he had, and in the end the only thing that changed hands, in that whole long candle-lit con, was two lonely hearts that had each spent a lifetime certain no one would ever want the true thing underneath, passed, at last, safe into each other's keeping, and never once, to the end of their days, let go. The best thief I ever trained, and she never made a cleaner lift in her life than the one she never meant to. She went to rob a duke and stole him instead, and he'd have told you, did tell me once by my own fire in that quiet deep-water voice, that he'd handed himself over gladly the first night, across a crowded room, to a girl with a false name and the loneliest, truest eyes in England.